Good
Okay.
morning.
Good morning. We're holding by a kol sheichtim on Tes Zayin Amud Beis. It's towards the bottom of the page. A kol sheichtim alum sheichtim. There's two dots there. It's 11 lines from the bottom. The Mishnah said that a kol sheichtim, loylam sheichtim, uba kol sheichtim. There's three phrases here. First of all, we thank Hashem that we're able to enter every day. And in this chesed learning, we should have the base of English immediately. Okay, so the Gemara starts off with the translation of this will be Hakol Sheichtim. Maybe it means everyone can shecht. We'll see in a moment. Bakol Sheichtim. La'ilam Sheichtim means you always shecht, or forever you shecht. Bakol Sheichtim, you can use anything to shecht. The Gemara starts off with Hakol Sheichtim. What does it mean? Everyone shechts. Doesn't mean that everyone shechts, as in the subject of sheichtim, that everyone is the subject. All people can shecht. It's the opposite. It's the object. You shecht everything. Hakol sheichtim, hakol b'shchita v'afilu oif. Everything gets shechted. That's the way the Gemara learns it. Afilu oif. Loilam sheichtim. What does it mean? Forever you shecht. Mantana. Who would be the author of this? Amar Rabba. It's Rabbi Shmali. Rabbi says it's Rabbi Shmal. The Tanya was started in a brayse. When Hashem will expand your boundaries, and you will say, as He spoke to you, and you will say, "Let us eat meat." So Rabbi Shmuel afterwards, the pasuk says, "V'zavachta v'bekarcha." It says that you'll shecht after that in the pasuk. So Rabbi Shmuel Malay Bakasav Lahatlem Basar Taiva Shabtchila Nasalem Basar Taiva Mishnech the Solar Tzitlam Basar Taiva Achshav Shagolo Yachal Yachsal Lisan Arishan Lakashnin Lam Sheichtim. In the desert, he says, according to Rabbi Shmuel, they were not allowed to eat meat. They were vegetarian. They could bring a carbon. We're going to learn on the next page, but and the carbon would require shechita, but they were not allowed to eat meat in the desert. Came into Eretz Yisrael, they're allowed to eat meat. So now, when we lose Eretz Yisrael and we go into Golos, maybe we should go back to that status that we had before, where we're not allowed to eat meat. So it's like this. Originally, Nesalem Basar Taiva, Hut, then Mishneh Hutalem Basar Taiva. Basar Taiva means just meat for pleasure. So now, maybe when we go to exile, maybe we should go back to the original prohibition. So our Mishnah says, Loilam Sheichtim, no, that you're allowed to eat meat. Lo'ilam means forever you can shecht. Maskefla Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef has a question on this pshat. This is Rabba. Rabba was the Rosh Hashiva. Yosef takes him over 22 years later. They're contemporaries. Rabbi Yosef asks the Rabba, Hi lo'ilam sheichtim v'eichlim yibayilei. Your whole point over here is not that you're allowed to shecht, or that you have to shecht. Your point over here is that you're allowed to eat. So you missed the main point. You should have said, Lo'ilam sheichtim v'eichlim. You're always allowed to eat. You shecht and you eat, but you're always allowed to eat is the main point. V'oid. Another point is that you're missing the logic behind the prohibition. Mikara my time it's why originally was it prohibited to eat meat? Mishum davi makarvi lemishkan, makarvi lemishkan, because they lived in close proximity. They were close to the Mishkan. Saif my time ishtaru. What was the reason why it became mutter later to eat regular meat? Davim rachim Mishkan. We were far from the Mishkan. In other words, if you're so close to the Mishkan and you're going to eat meat, so bring it as a carbon and you'll eat the meat with the carbon. But now that you're so far from the Mishkan because you live in Eretz Yisrael, you live all over Yisrael, you can't just because you want dinner, you're going to bring a carbon. It's a 3-hour car ride. You can't do it like that. It could be a few days on a camel or something. So they said, okay, you can eat meat without bringing a carbon. So you should have a havamina that now that we're in Golos, that maybe we should have to go back to the status of the midbar and we should have to bring everything as a korban. It's exactly the opposite. That now that we're more distant, so then we should not require to bring in, it should be even more mutter to eat meat. Elam Rabbi Yosef, so Rabbi Yosef says, instead of Rabba's pshat, that Rabba said that this is the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, who holds that in the desert they weren't allowed to eat meat. Rabbi Yosef says, no, it's the opposite. It's Rabbi Akiva. It's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya that he taught in a brisa, Ki yarchik mimcha makim, asher yivchar, Shem lekecha, lasum shemai sham. When you live distant from the land, from the place that was chosen by Hashem for that His name should dwell there, over there you'll shecht from your cattle and from your sheep. Now, this pasuk is actually talking about Psuli HaMikdashim. If there's a korban that became pasul, you're allowed to shecht it. I think so. Anyway, he learns from this, Rabbi Kiva Imer, Leiba Kasvel Alesalem Basin Chira. Pasuk is doing is, he holds that in the desert, they didn't have to shecht in order to eat. In the desert, they could just pierce the animal, Nechira. They could just make a hole to the animal, like shoot the animal. They could pierce the animal, not Avram and Achai, but they didn't need the laws of Shechita didn't apply until they came into the land. Then they weren't allowed to kill the animal in that manner. They had to actually shecht it. Now that we're exiled, maybe we should go back to the original and we should say that you're allowed to eat animals that were just pierced. Okay, so Rabbi Yosef says that's what's pshat in our Mishnah that says we don't hold like that. We say that you always have to shecht. Notice the fact that you're allowed to eat, Rabbi Yosef is avoiding that issue. He's saying that we're following Rabbi Akiva that says you were always allowed to eat meat. Only Shaila is, did you have to shecht it? So we're saying Lailam Sheichtim that you have to shecht. Yeah. As opposed to Rabbah that said you weren't allowed to eat. And now Lailam Sheichtim means that you're allowed to eat. So Rabbi Yosef had a kasha on that. Rabbi Yosef has a better pshat. Okay, but my kamiflgi, what exactly is the machlekes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael? Rabbi Akiva savar basatay v'liyatzeklau. Rabbi Akiva holds that there was never a prohibition to eat meat. Shmuel savar basanechira liyashteriklau. Rabbi Shmuel says that there was never a permissibility to eat meat that wasn't shechted. Rabbi Shmuel haina diksev v'shachar espen abakar. Then, according to Rabbi Shmuel, we understand why the pasuk is talking about when it says that there was a command to shech the karban. Elo Rabbi Akiva, mai v'shachat. But according to Rabbi Akiva, why does it say v'shachat? You don't have to shecht. They're asking about the karban. If eating meat doesn't require shechita, so then why do you have to shecht? The Gemara says kachim shiny. No. If you wanted to eat it, you could just pierce the animal. If you wanted to bring a karban over there, everyone he agrees that you required shechita. We're saying according to Rabbi Shmuel, v'shachat is telling me that you were never allowed to eat anything, and if you wanted to bring a karban, then you had to shecht it. Okay, so it says v'shachat is ben abaka, that you would bring a karban, you shecht. According to Rabbi Kiva, it says you're allowed to eat without shechita. So why does it say v'shachat? So it says that's by a karban. By a karban, you have to shecht. It says by when the people complained about meat, they wanted meat in the desert. So Moshe Rabbeinu says rhetorically, he says, "I'm going to shecht for them sain and bakar, cattle and flock." So according to Rabbi Shmuel, I understand what he means. You shachet because in order to eat it, you would have to shecht it. You weren't allowed to eat it at all, but unless you brought it as a karban. But if that was gonna be the case, you would have to shecht it. So that's why he uses the word yishachet. What does it mean that he's going to shecht it? He would shecht for them cattle and flock, so you could just pierce it. The Gemara says nechir shalem zui shchitasam. That's just a word. The word you say shchita. It means in that context. It means nechira. It means piercing it. Bishlam Rabbi Shmuel, Haina Ditanana Sheikhet Ben Islam Lambiyadev Neicher Vamaka Patul Malchasis. Rabbi Kiva my Patul Malchasis. Okay, we have a Mishnah that says like this: that if someone shechs an animal and it doesn't come out right, the shechita isn't done right. Either there's a pagam in the knife or he delays in the shechita. The question is now: do you have to do kisei adam? You have to cover the blood. It would have to be by a chaya, by a wild animal. For example, a deer or a gazelle, something like that. So then there's a halacha that you have to cover the blood, just like by a bird. So what happens over here? It says you cover the blood only if there's a shechita. If it's not a shechita, then you don't have to cover the blood. So it says hasheichet v'nisnabla biyadi. If it became a nevela because there was a problem with the shechita, v'haneicher, or maybe you didn't do a shechita at all. Maybe you just pierced the animal like with a gun. You shot it. A ma'aker, or if you pull out the tubes, the trachea and the esophagus, you rip it out instead of cutting it. It says patim melachasis. So you don't have to cover the blood. Now 1 second. 1 second. If this is the way of eating it, if this is would be eligible to eat, so then why you pater melachasis? Why don't you have to cover the blood? This is the regular way of eating. But the answer is because it's not. This is actually a nevela. It doesn't work. This is like treif. So you're never allowed to eat this. So that's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion that holds. He held that the people in the desert were not allowed to eat meat at all. So then you don't have to cover this because there was never a heter to eat this type of meat. Rabbi Akiva, my pater malachasa is. But according to Rabbi Akiva, since there was one time when this meat was eligible to eat, Torah was given, was actually allowed to eat this type of meat by neicher. If it was pierced, we said in the desert you're allowed to eat this. So that's the case. So why don't you have to cover the blood? This was permissible at one point to eat it. My answer is hayol v'itzar. Once it became prohibited, then the law changed. And now you're not allowed to eat it. You also don't have to cover the blood. Okay, it's interesting chiddush. Which meant that the laws of kisei adam switched, besides for the laws of shechita. According to Rabbi Akiva, the laws of shechita were introduced when they came into Eretz Yisrael. At that time was also a switch in the halacha of kisei adam, that you only have to do kisei adam if a real shechita was done. If it wasn't a real shechita, then beforehand you would have to, and now in Eretz Yisrael you don't have to. Yeah, one of the teachers by me was asking me, because the Rambam paschals like Rabbi Akiva says that in Eretz Yisrael in Hilchos Shechita, we had it like a few days ago. In Hilchos Shechita, he says that in the desert they didn't have to shech. They could have eaten basar nechira only when they came into Eretz Yisrael, like Rabbi Akiva saying over here. He said, so what's that whole reason why they tell us why we eat milchiks on Shavuos? Because they didn't know the laws of shechita, so it's just easier just to keep it milchik. Says according to the Rambam, that's the reason is ridiculous. They didn't need to shech. They could just eat it. They just shoot the animal and eat it. Okay. Maybe they didn't know how to remove the chaylev. Didn't know how to take out the gid anasha. Okay. Bishlam Rabbi Akiva damar basar taiva liyitzar klal. According to Rabbi Akiva, that says that basar taiva, that the eating meat was never prohibited. You're always allowed to eat meat, even in the desert. That's what it means when it says that you're allowed to eat. Now it says that you're allowed to eat sulia mikdashim even betuma. You could eat it like a tzviva ayal. You could eat it. You don't have to keep it pure. You could eat it like a deer and a gazelle. You could eat it. A tummy person and a tar person can eat it from the same plate. You don't have to be careful. So, according to Rabbi Akiva, that says that you're allowed to eat a deer and a gazelle even in the desert. So now we understand why it says that now, money. It says that you can eat the psuli hamakdashim, that means the carbon that got a mum, you could eat it the same way. Because the other one you're allowed to eat, this you're also allowed to eat. So Rabbi Shmuel, but according to Rabbi Shmuel, that says in the desert, they weren't allowed to eat any meat. So tzvi v'ayol gufei mi'avishari. Why does the pasuk say that you can eat this meat of a psuli hamakdashim? That when a carbon gets a mum, you're allowed to eat it even if it becomes impure, because it's not a carbon anymore. Why does it say you're allowed to eat it like a deer and a gazelle? A deer and a gazelle you're not allowed to eat. We said according to Rabbi Shmuel that you're not allowed to eat. They weren't allowed to eat meat in the desert, only if you could bring it as a carbon. And if they would bring it as a carbon, so then fine. But a deer and a gazelle are not carbonas. So why does it say the comparison that Torah uses to eating this meat? I'm on 17a. That you can eat it like a deer and a gazelle. My answer is, Yasser Rachmana behema dechasi lakrava. What did the Eibishter prohibit, according to Rabbi Shmuel in the desert, from eating? Was an animal that was fit to be brought as a karban. But a wild animal that wasn't fit to be a karban, Rabbi Shmuel would agree they were allowed to eat. So they were, according to this, they were allowed to eat things that weren't karbanas. According to Rabbi Shmuel, I said before that according to Rabbi Shmuel they were vegetarian. They weren't vegetarian. They just couldn't eat the cattle without bringing it as a karban. They couldn't just make a barbecue from a sheep or a goat or an ox. But if they captured a deer, that they were allowed to make a barbecue, and they were allowed. They weren't actually vegetarian. That was allowed to be eaten in the desert. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah is a classic Rabbi Yirmiyah question. Sar Nechira Shechnisa Yisrael Imaim La'aretz Ma'u. In the desert, according to Rabbi Akiva, they didn't have to shech their animals. They only had to shech them when they came into Eretz Yisrael. So let's say, talking about without refrigeration back then, so they probably had they made it into salami, like they dried the meat, the South African stuff, biltong. They dry the meat. Anyway, what happened is they didn't shech the meat. They pierced the meat in the I can't take you anywhere. they pierced the meat, and then they said, "What do you know? We cross over the yard, and now we're in Eretz Yisrael, and they have this meat, this salami in their sacks. Are they allowed to eat it? It wasn't shechted. The laws in Eretz Yisrael switched. Now you need shrita, but this was mutter to eat yesterday. So, Maho, the Gemara says, Amos. When are you asking this question? Ilim b'sheva shekavshu. Are you asking about the 7 years when they were conquering the land? They were with battle. It says, Hashtad avritami yishterlu. The ksiv batim leim kol tuv Rab Yirmiyah barab amarav kasle the chaziri bas nechir mibai. When they were going to war, they didn't have to keep kosher. They were allowed to eat it says that when you come into Eretz Yisrael and you come in, you'll find houses that are filled with all good things. What do you think it's in there? What is all the good things that are there? Pork. It says, and you'll eat it. Why? Because they're at war. They're allowed to eat it. Now you're worried about the basar nechira, the cow that wasn't shechted, and we're worried about that should be a problem. They don't have to keep kosher. They're in battle. When it says it must be 7 years after. That's why I'm saying it's salami. These old salamis from Luigi Siegel's. That's not around, I'm sure. Right? So anyway, didn't they have like salamis hanging around them there? So okay, it's afterwards. Okay, so we're talking about 7 year. It's got to be 7-year-old salamis that are hanging. But the Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking, are they allowed to eat it afterwards? Or if you want, you could say Leilam b'sheva shekavshu. maybe we are talking about this first 7 years. And Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking the question: when did they allow them to eat the non-kosher food? That's if it belonged to the goyim. They're taking it as spoils. But their own food that wasn't shechted, you keep kosher in the house. At home, this was the food that they got from outside. That was a different story. That had its own halacha. So leave this as a question, Rabbi Yirmiyah's question. Amazing. No, still on, yeah. With the website.
They have a Facebook page.
Okay. I'm a Rabbah. Rabbah says, Shanisa hakol sheichtim, aloylam sheichtim. You learned already what's the pshat hakol sheichtim. You said that everything gets shechted, and you said it's referring to a bird. Even birds get shechted. Even birds need to be shechted. Then you said loylam sheichtim, and you translated it that you have to shecht even after we've lost the temple, the Beis Hamikdash. You still have to shecht. Not like in the desert where Kiva held that you don't have to shecht. He says now loylam sheichtim, you have to shecht even though we don't have the Beis Hamikdash.
Is that proof that you have to shecht the ben kuda even though you don't have to shecht? We said we do it.
That was a rabbinic law.
Oh, it was never. It's totally rabbinic.
Yeah. But the rabbinic law that you have to shecht it anyway.
Oh,
okay. Once it starts walking around, then they shecht it.
Yeah.
It's only before it would walk around that okay. Problem is bakol sheichtim my mashnislei. How do you want to learn with everything you shecht? If you want to say bein b'tzur, bein b'schuchas, bein b'krumas shalkana, that what it means to say is that you can shecht with a flintstone, with a glass, or with the edge of a reed, sawgrass. But I would like the entire Mishnah to be symmetrical. That it says everyone shechts, or everything gets shechted. We said that meant the bird. You shecht you always shecht. That means even after the time of the Beis Hamikdash, you still continue to shecht. And then you can use anything to shecht that's referring to a flintstone. If those are talking about the sheichet, so hainami b'sheichtim, then this should also be with the sheichet. In other words, are we talking about the subject or the object? Talking about the person that shechts, or are we talking about the animals that get shechted? And if they're talking about the object, the ones that get shechted, then we should also be talking about those that get shechted. So what's happening here is we're saying that hakol sheichtim means even birds. Hakol sheichtim means even a knife, even a flintstone could be used as a knife. It says, but that's not symmetrical because one is talking about the sheichet and one's talking about the nishchat.
We're just missing mikol sheichtim.
All right. Yeah. Bakal, Nikol. No, we don't have Nikol.
No, we don't.
They have Hakal, Bakal, and Li'olam. Yeah. Elam Rava has a different shot. Hakal sheichtim. When it says that everyone shechts, doesn't mean that everyone gets shechted. As in all the animals, even the birds. That's not what we're talking about. It's not the object. It's the subject. Hakal sheichtim. That every person can shecht. First of all, we have two Mishnayos that say Hakol Sheichtim. One is in the first page, another one is on Daf Tezayin. So it says twice. One of them is Lasi Kuti, that a Kuti was allowed to shech. Said if Yisrael Minal Gava or whatever, there was a discussion there. Lasi Yisrael Mumar. The other one is to tell us that Yisrael Mumar, even though he does have Eiris, but we can still trust his Shechita because he doesn't want to eat treif if kosher is available. Just when he's traveling, it's hard for him once in a while. David Alensky told me that came home from yeshiva, and they didn't keep kosher. His family, his parents. So, but they didn't eat pig. They said they went to the He said, okay, we're going to go out to eat. We're going to go to McDonald's because McDonald's is not pig. It's a cow. It's cow meat, beef. So he said, no, I can't go there. So they said, why? He said because it's not, the animal's not slaughtered. So he says, the mother says, but it's not a problem because it's not pork. It's fine. He says, no, my Rabbi Goldberg in the yeshiva, he said that it's exactly the same thing. Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay. So here we're learning that who's allowed to shecht? Hakol shechtim, who can shecht? It says Akuti and also Yisrael Mumar. What does it mean? La'ilam shechtim? Forever you can shecht. It says Bein b'yom, bein b'layla, bein b'reish hagag, bein b'reish hasfina. You can shecht in any situation. You can shecht by day. You can shecht by night. You can shecht on the top of a roof. You can shecht on the top of a boat. Even though we had concerns that maybe it looks like you're shechting for idolatry, because on top of the roof you're going up to shecht for the stars or something, like as if you're an offering to the stars. Maybe on the boat, maybe you're shechting over the water, it's over to the ocean. And it turns out that we say that no, it's not an issue. You're shechting over there for other reasons, and over the boat is because you want to keep the boat clean or something. So you're shechting over the boat, not it's not like you're shechting to the water. Bakol shechtim, and what does it mean? With anything you can shech. That's bein b'tzur, bein b'tzruchus, bein b'krumas shel kana. You can use a flintstone, you can use a glass knife, you can use even sawgrass. Do they say sawgrass? What do they say? A reed. A reed.
But they didn't have sawgrass.
Maybe they did.
It was sawgrass, but these guys don't.
They didn't know about it. There's only sawgrass in the Everglades. That's the only place where it exists.
By the expressway.
It'd be interesting whether the swamps of Africa. Look it up.
You have to bring in all those big books that you have with pictures.
Plus samples.
Okay. Next Gemara is a little bit. I don't have good pictures. I don't have any pictures actually in this Gemara, but the next Gemara really should have pictures. Do you have an article? Do you have pictures on your page?
Not yet.
Turn the page to see if there's
with
pictures.
the knife.
The knife. Okay. You can't use a magal kutzer. Magal kutzer we said was a short sickle.
This is the next one. I talked about next.
Okay. So, if you could, no way.
Whose handwriting is that?
The various needs.
Is that my knife? That's my picture?
Yeah.
Wow, look at this. 8 years ago, 7 years ago.
Okay,
Okay, this is actually good because we're gonna need this.
that's your art talented groups.
Hardly. So Magal Kutzer and Megera, both of these are two types of knives. One is a short, a harvesting sickle, and one is another type of sickle. How do they translate it there? A saw. Those are things that you're not allowed to use. You can use anything, but you can't use those. You can't use this type of sickle, and you also can't use a saw. Avud the Shmuel's father. What do we know about him? He was a sefer by. No, that was Reb Nachman's father. Avud the Shmuel.
Avoid the Shmuel.
He traveled back by a demon, I think, so that he could be with his wife. Remember that story? It was it was away from his house, and then his wife conceived, and he came back. How did he get back? How did she become pregnant? It's because he traveled on some sort of magic type of way. Anyway, whatever the case is, Pagam, he took a knife and he made a blemish in it, Vishadar, and he sent it to the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, well, we learned previously that you always had the shochet had to show the knife.
Show the knife. But here he's asking.
He's really testing.
Here he's asking if this is a kosher type of Shadar, and then Shadar Pagam Vishadar. Then he did it again. Shalchulei, they sent him back. That let's give you the rule. Kamagira shanino. If it's like a saw, then it's problematic. Okay, so I guess some blemishes are not a problem in the knife.
Oh, wait. So does that mean they're saying multiple ones are definitely no good because they're like a
Right.
saw, but one may be good depending on
Right.
location. So,
Right.
because that's what it sounds like.
I think so.
Definitely goes with
Because we'll see in a moment.
explanation later. Yeah.
Tana Rabbanan, the thought in the Brisa, Sakin Shiesh, Pagimis Harbe.
Oh, mazel tov on your brother.
Yeah, thank you. Sakin, a knife, Shiesh Pagimis Harbe, that has a lot of blemishes in it, a lot of nicks. Yeah. Tidan Kamegera. So that's like a saw, Vishain Bella Pagima Achas, but if it only has one nick, a geras, psula. If the nick is like this, see the middle one over here? The geras, it means on both ends, there's two sharp parts on this. Okay? You see that? Yeah, two sharp parts on it. So then that's going to be psula. That's called the oigeres. Misucheches, if it's entangled, that means that it's smoothed out at one side, then it's kshera. Now, hechidami oigeres, hechidam misucheches. What is? Let's give me an example of an oigeres.
What's the name for the woman?
So that's the joke with there was a guy, I can't find this joke, but it was like a long joke of this guy that went to get a smicha test, and the Rav asked him. But years ago, smicha included shchita, treifus. So the Rav asked him, "What's an oigeres?" Which is this knife with a nick. So he says it's a girl that's 12 and a half years old. So the Rav says, "So what's a boigeres?" So he went to the next thing. Now I don't remember what it was, but there's a whole thing. So he said again the wrong thing. So the Rav said, "So what's that?" So he said something else. So the Rav said, "So what's that?" And it went on like 20 times. And then the Rav said, "Okay, I'm not giving you smicha." He says, "Why? I didn't know only one thing."
But what's the name of the woman who came to the get from?
Guna.
Yeah. I got them all.
Anyway, so the Igeres here is this nick. What's an example of this knife that's entangled? So it says like this. Amar Rabbi Lazar. It says Rabbi Eliezer. It's supposed to be Rabbi Lazar. Igeres mishtei ruches. Igeres is a nick that has on both sides. It's how do they translate? They're saying nick.
Notch.
Notch. Now, what's a notch? A notch means that it has a sharp edge.
It just means
It's a cut.
I know, but what it means to say is a sharp edge. A sharp edge on two sides. Misucheches is miruach achas. Misucheches is like this. That it's miruach achas. You only have the top one. The top one. You see, over here you could shecht smooth. Yeah, it's wavy. There's like a wave in it, but that's not. There's no sharp edge. You don't get a sharp edge until you hit there. That's when the problem is that you can't rip the neck of the animal. You have to cut it. This would be ripping. So, but here, even though it's wavy, in order to get to that, but that's not a problem. That's misucheches. Misucheches is miruach achas. Ma'ishna mishtei ruchos. Why is telling me that if it's on both sides, the more shekama machlesh, more shabasra baza, that what's going to happen is the first nick cuts through the skin on the neck. The second notch is going to rip through the simanim, to tear the simanim. The same problem is over here. Miruach chachas nami, even if it's on one side, churfa desakina machlesh. So the sharp edge of the knife is going to cut through the skin, and more shabaza. But when it gets to the nick, to the notch, you're going to end up cutting the simanim it's going to tear it.
So stop.
So it's the same thing.
You have only one.
If there was only one if there's only one that would tear the skin on the neck, but when it comes to cutting the simanim, the trachea and the esophagus, it would cut it, then fine. But here, maybe it's going to cut through the skin and tear the trachea and the esophagus, which that would be the problem. So the Gemara says the koyim maresha de sakina. No, we're talking about that the nick is at the beginning of the neck. So the beginning of the knife. So that means the notch is at the beginning of the knife. So that means it's going to tear through the skin, and then by the comes to the simanim, it's going to cut. That's not a problem. Saif kiyosla machlasha kiyosa baza. But maybe you're going to use the knife like this. You're going to cut through, and then pull back because you cut and you pull back. You're going to go hit the same thing again. Going shahilach v'lehevi. It's talking about where you went in one direction, you didn't go back the other direction.
That's the kosher.
Yeah, as long as the knife is long enough. The knife is double the size of the neck, then you don't have to pull back. You can keep going in the same motion. We go with like this, but officially, if the knife is double the size of the neck, then you only have to do one motion.
That's why we had that hypothetical case
of shechting and with an arrow. So for there we had two answers. One answer was that when the energy finishes, it starts to go backwards. Mm-hmm. The other one was that it was double the size of the neck. Okay. Amar Rava. You see that by mine video official shechta. It's talking about this old lady that she gets into her car. And she says all these newfangled things. She can't stand it. She gets into the car and they start showing. She goes into reverse. They start showing her a movie. Garbage cans. Garbage cans flying. People running.
That was just a few days ago.
Yeah.
I like the one with the kid with the glasses. Yes.
I didn't see it. Okay. Amar Rava. Gimel midas pesakin. There's three. Let me translate midas. Three measures.
He says levels.
Three levels of knives. Ageres. If there's an ageres in it, which meant that there was two nicks, right? Two notches. So lo yeshchet. And if you don't use it to shech, v'mshachat shchitas psula. And if you do, it's invalid. Mesuchechas means it's wavy on one side, but there's only one notch. Lo yeshchet balachatchila. Don't use it to shech. V'mshachat. But if you used it shchitas kshera, then it's kosher. Oila v'yored. Pesakin. If this means it's entirely wavy, it just goes up and down. Not serrated, but it's just, it has like waves in it. So then sheikhet balachatchila, you can use it even lachatchila. Rav Huna breder Rav Nechemia le Rav Ashi. Rav Huna, son of Rav Nechemia, says to Rav Ashi. It's a different Rav Huna. The first Rav Huna was a student of Rav. This is a generation of Rav Ashi. 5 generations later. Amritlan Mishmei Rav, you said in the name of Rav that Mischaches Psula, that if it's Mischaches means one notch, it's puzzle. Vaha Amar Rava. I don't know what it's saying over there. Yeah, Amar Rava. Mischaches Kshera. That if it's one notch, it's puzzle. One notch is puzzle, but Rava says one notch is kasha. The Gemara says like kasha. There's not a problem. Kansha Helach Vehevi. When do we say that it's a problem? That is Psula. That's if you went in two directions, forward and backwards. This is where you went, but you didn't go backwards. So therefore, you missed the notch. Here I wish there was a picture. Sasa means the top of a ear of grass, ear of corn or wheat or something like that. It's like the crown on the top. I don't know what exactly that means. They don't have any picture in there? How do they describe it? Damila Sasa. It's similar to, let me look at this thing. Damila Sasa. If cutting the edge of the knife was bumpy, like on, what is the law? You know what on is? AWN? It's apparently the top of the... It's just saying over here that the surface was bumpy and uneven, similar to the bristle-like sides on of a stalk of wheat. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Man yavlin bisrachlina. Amalei, he says, if only someone would give me that meat, then I would have no hesitation about eating it. Perfectly kosher.
We don't know what on is.
It's the top of the crown of the wheat.
Like an awning.
But awning is just something that hangs over.
But it's the top of something,
Oh.
and maybe this is what hangs over the top of it. I'm just saying maybe it's the same shorish.
Maybe. Okay, let's leave it over here. Rav Tamar of Chisda. Good spot to stop. Rav Chisda. It's 6 lines down from the white lines. Okay, have a good day.
They don't know the origin.